Week 14 of the NFL season officially begins today. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to localize it. It is SNL. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Appreciate everyone who subscribed to the new channel. It's about a week old. I think we're 1.2K deep, and we very much appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe right along. We've had you covered all year. Cody and I individually have had you covered digitally for the last few years, and we've been covering this team for a long ass time. And it's just continuing to expand. And we appreciate y'all for riding along with us and getting through the bye week and helping elevate the channel. Let's get into the most polarizing topic of the year. Bobby Slowik. Bobby Slowik spoke today. You were there. Did anything stick out with what Slowik said? And is this the start of Bobby Slowik coaching for his job, or do you think Bobby's safe?
So Slowik basically said today that they're a couple weeks behind from seeing excellence in practice carry over to the game. He said for about a month now in practice, they've really liked the way they've practiced, and it's really showed up in the past two games. And then the bye week allowed him the ability to kind of have a clear understanding of how bad they are when they don't execute and how good they are when they do execute. And I'm assuming that was then sent over to the players. And as I'm kind of sitting there listening to Bobby Slowik, I started to think one of the best things that could happen for the Texans for the 2024 season is if Bobby Slowik saved his job. Because I don't believe they should have Bobby Slowik be the offensive coordinator in 2025 if there is not a resounding amount of support from people in the building. Like if they don't feel like Bobby Slowik is absolutely the guy and got it going and fixed things and could take them where they need to go on offense, they should go somewhere else. There's never been more offensive minds that you can pick from and choose from in the world of football. They should go somewhere else. And then I got to thinking, well, what does saving his job look like? Well,
That's my question.
Saving his job, what does it look like? Well, they need to be one of the better offenses in the NFL down the stretch, and they need to be significantly better than what they have been. Like, and I say better, like they don't need to be the best offense in football in the final 4 weeks in the playoffs, but if they make a big leap and he showcases clearly some changes to the way he operates, and they're able to actually rely on their offense, and they're not a defense and rush only first team, and it actually becomes something that opposing teams have to fear, because now you just account for it. Like you don't, like there's not any sort of like defensive coordinator wakes up in the middle of the night worried about the Houston Texans, like I feel like there was at times last year, or like it felt like they potentially could have been this year. Nobody's losing sleep over playing the Texans offense right now. But if it looked really good down the stretch, looked good in the playoffs, Bobby Slowik could save his job, and that would be really good for the 2024 Houston Texans. You can argue that maybe it's not good for 2025 and so on, but for 2024, him saving his job would be really good for this team and really good for where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the offense looking good is important. I was kind of amused because I listened to the press conference as well, and I'll be back there. I'll be able to talk to him next week. Um, I was kind of amused where he kind of caught himself, but it almost felt like he was at least publicly, and you always got to balance publicly and privately and all that, but he was at least like almost acting as if the way in which they performed in Jacksonville was just what we've been working to do. Like we haven't done it. We've seen it in practice and we've saw signs of it, but that was what we were out to do. And and then he catches, well, obviously we weren't perfect, but and it's like, do you realize who the Jags are this year? Like, do you realize that that's not a good football team? So that was kind of amusing from Bobby Slowik there, where it was just like, I mean, y'all beat the Jags, and it wasn't like beautiful. It wasn't beautiful. Like it wasn't like the off. I didn't look at the offense and say, all right, that's what I'm talking about. That's what it's all about. I might have thought that against New England, even like New England, they got going, and then Pierce scored late, and they scored in the second half. But it almost felt like I don't know how to evaluate what their expectations are of this offense based on what they say publicly, because it just feels like the goals are just so low. But on the other hand, and I'm kind of talking out of both ends here on SNL, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. On the other hand, it might just be realistic, you know, like it might just be realistic as to what to expect with the cards that he's been dealt.
I mean, certainly they are not where they were from a talent perspective at the beginning of the year. They're missing Stephon Diggs, and they clearly believe they had a little bit more in the running back room than what they do. It's really just Joe Mixon. And they didn't go out there and add anybody with Joe Mixon or pursue or chase anybody to replace Damian Pierce or Daria Gumbawale or anybody else. So they've had some self-inflicted challenges and some unfortunate challenges. I also can't sit here and tell you that, like, oh, well, everything would just be fine if Diggs was healthy. Like, Diggs was healthy while they had some of these struggles. Like, he was playing. Now, Nico wasn't playing, but Diggs was healthy when they had some of these struggles. And it's not like it's just simply and totally solved if Stephon Diggs' knee injury didn't occur against the Indianapolis Colts and into season. Like, that's not a simple aspect of it either. And to your point about, like, Jacksonville, like, I'm tired of enough from this offense. Like, I want them to be exceptional. Like, I want them to be good. Like, Jacksonville was enough, but and I can remember when we were talking about the game, I was like, yeah, it's one of CJ Stroud's, better games of the year. Thought he looked pretty good. And you were like, that he didn't look that good. And I was like, yeah, but it's one of his better games. Like, and that's kind of where, like, the goalposts have moved for this offense. Whereas, like, the defense, if they give up a yard in the second half, it's like D'Amico thinks they stink. But, like, the offense, it's like, yeah, you had one half of football where you couldn't score a touchdown against the worst defense in the AFC, and it's like, you guys did a great job there.
Well, let me ask you this, and we might get more into this a little bit later. Like, when I think about what this offense is supposed to be, and I was actually listening to Troy Aikman this morning, and he was talking about how impressed he's been with Sam Darnold, because next week, Monday night, they got the Vikings, and he was just listing the offenses, and he was like going down the McVay pipeline, and he was like, and if I'm a coach, then this is the pipeline that I want. Like, this is it, and it's fascinating how good this pipeline, and he said it starts with Shanahan, the Mike Shanahan pipeline. It's fascinating how good this has been, and this is what I would always want. And I started thinking about it, like, as I was driving, and I was like, man, like, that's what we got, but it just doesn't seem like it just seems like it's so player dependent, to where that's not what this is supposed to be. Like, tonight, there's a good game on tonight. It's the Rams and it's the 49ers, and that's like the two faces. Like, if we're trying to start with the tree up here, then those are the two faces of, like, and eventually you can get to D'Amico and you can get to Slowik just with those two faces. But if I told you right now that the Texans are going to score 42 points on Sunday, what would you say? Look at that. Look, that face says it all. You'd be surprised, right?
I'd be floored.
Yeah, you'd be shocked.
I'd also
What
be
if I told,
rich.
yeah. What if I told you that the 49ers are going to score 42 tonight? What would you say?
I'd be like, well, that kind of makes sense. They got going, and they've got a good offense, and they can trust their guys.
They don't have Brandon Ayuk. Like, they're missing their top receiver. Christian McCaffrey's out. Mason's out. So they're down to their third running back. Their third running back's injured. And their offensive line's banged up. One of the best in the game is banged up. And you wouldn't be shocked, and I wouldn't be shocked if they go out there and score 42 points. All right. So what if I told you that the Rams are going to go out there and light it up and score 42 points? What would you say?
I'd get it, man. I'd certainly understand it. Stafford and Nakua and Cooper Kupp
Yep.
in the passing game, and then Kyron Williams. It seems like it doesn't matter who the opponent is. Kyron Williams can get going on the ground.
That's what I'm saying. Like, all these offenses that we talk about, that, like, when it comes to this system, like, it just seems like they're able to move the rock, and they're not just so player dependent. And that's the thing that that it is. I'm just wondering, like, because obviously players make you better and good players, but even a lot of these like scores that we talk about, like it just seems like Joe Mixon being Joe Mixon has been a couple times where they've said, yeah, and we got it going in the second half. It's like, well, Joe Mixon just completely out alpha donged every single player on the football field and took it to the end zone. Like it didn't look like there was anything like drawn up. So that's what that's what's just weird about this offense and what we thought we signed up for and what we've seen in all that. And that's just really the whole thing with the Bobby Slowik thing is I would like to get to that point. Maybe you get to that point. Maybe there's like a deeper meaning. Maybe it's an off season, but it just doesn't seem like it seems like these guys can be missing guys and they're still able to get the offense going.
Is there what's your gut tell you for 2025? You had to make a guess right now. Is Bobby Slowik the offensive coordinator next year?
I don't think that they're unsatisfied with the offense. Like I just don't. I think that the reservations about hiring a defensive coach, and I'm hearing it out here. Like I'm hearing it out here when there's a potential coaching search, as I'm filling in hosting at the ticket. Everybody when this conversation starts, and I want D'Amico to be the coach. I always was. I was D'Amico or bust. But I just feel like the reservations are kind of coming into effect to where I don't know that the grasp of the offense is high enough to where they're going to make like proactive or necessary changes. It almost feels like it has to smack them in the face.
Well, I mean, look, if the organization can give Bobby Slowik a break by saying, well, the players weren't good enough, then he's the offensive coordinator next year. Like, the
And it
players.
might be the truth. It might be the truth. I just want to
Sure.
get to a point where it's not player dependent. Like it might be the truth. Like these offensive linemen might not fit into what they're trying to do. The receivers, like we got to stop with the receivers. Like the three down that you're helpless. Three down, especially if they actually have to fill in a game. And it might be the truth. I just want to get to a point where you're not
That,
so player dependent.
and that's what this offense is supposed to be too. Like that was that's one of the shining bright spots of this offense is it is a style of offense and a level of offense that you can get guys for 2-3 weeks to play really well and execute. There's that dirty word that they use so much when your star players aren't there, when your star players aren't available to you. And I mean, the 49ers are a great example of this. I mean, you look at what Jawan Jennings is for them right now. I mean, he's been buried on their depth chart because they've had these successful guys. Those guys either aren't playing well or getting the opportunities like Debo is, or they're hurt like Ayuk. And now Jawan Jennings is on pace for 1,000 yards. He's got 6 touchdowns, and he's one off of his career total in
He's their
touchdowns.
best receiver. He's their
Yeah.
best receiver. Like it's not
Yeah.
even close right now. The other thing, the question is SNL Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you? What does it look like? I think they just have to get in the playoffs, and I think Bobby saves his job. Like I think the only way that Bobby Slowik loses his job, and I could be wrong, but this is just based on being there every day, all the time, following this team as close as anyone, hearing what everyone says. I think the only thing that could prevent Bobby from getting his job, from keeping his job, prevent him from keeping his job, is that there's like a monumental collapse. The offense stinks. They go 0-4, and the Colts go 3-1, and they don't make the playoffs, and it's done. Because I don't think they're proactively going to look into this offense. I just don't. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
I tend to agree with you. And I don't know that it's totally out of the realm of possibility that they could still make a change if it's just very defense forward, how they get there. And then if the offense just no shows in the playoffs, I don't know. It's out of the question, but I lean towards BS 25, Bobby Slowik 25. So that's what I lean towards. By the way, speaking of Bobby Slowik, Nico Collins is the only receiver that consistently gets open for this team. Nico Collins might get one of the shows of respect that only big-time receivers get, and that's the shadowing, the traveling with the top corner from the other team. It's Jalen Ramsey. Nico Collins getting the respect this weekend as He got to get shadowed this weekend by the best corner on the Miami Dolphins, Jalen Ramsey. I tend to think that's what they should do and what they will do, and force CJ Stroud to find anybody that's not Nico Collins to beat you.
Well, I don't know that this is really an island at this point. You know, I don't know that Jalen Ramsey's going to travel with Nico Collins and shut him out. I think those days are kind of behind Jalen Ramsey. I do wonder though, like even if he, like, let's say he follows him and gets cooked, I do wonder if that's how defensive coordinators are going to look at this situation. Where if we take Nico Collins out of the game, then this offense can't really beat us. I do wonder. I'm more. It's more so. It's more so about the approach than the fear of what the result would be if that approach was there. Because I don't think there's a Ramsey Island anymore. I think there was a time where it was. It wasn't even that long ago, but I don't think Jalen Ramsey is going to follow Nico Collins around and be able to stop him from doing what he wants to do.
Jalen Ramsey this year allowing a 88.3 passer rating when he is targeted, and he's the nearest defender that gets targeted. As a reference point to give you somebody else, Derek Stingley allowing a 57.8 passer rating when he's targeted. He's the nearest defender. So you're right. It's not the same level, but if that's their approach and Ramsey's the guy and he's going to travel a little bit, it is very difficult if Ramsey could turn, his assignment into Nico Collins into sort of a 50-50 match from time to time. It's very difficult to see where the Texans through the air are moving the ball consistently because Tank hasn't been good this year. The tight end usage has been irregular, I would say is probably the best way to put it, though Dalton Schultz got going with his best game of the season the last time they were out there. So I am interested to see what the Dolphins' defensive plan is. And if that is the plan, what's the counter punch that Slowik has out the gate for it to make sure that Nico's getting his, because that's how they're going to have to live and operate is when Nico's taking care of his business.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Like, even if they're attempting to do it, then that means something, or at least someone thinks that something's there. And that goes back to the Tank Dell discussion that we've been having this week about, man, they need you, man. Like they need more production out of the wide receiver position as a whole, the non-Nico wide receiver position, I should say. So CJ says he's one of the best in the league. So they got to step up. They got to do something. As Blue Boy 9 says in the comments.
As much as I want to show the proper amount of respect to what the Dolphins do have on their defense, they let Aaron Rodgers turn back the clock last week. And I get it. Aaron Rodgers has two very high-level receivers in Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. But this version of Aaron Rodgers on this New York Jets team should not be throwing for 340 yards against you. Like that is not what a good defense or a consistent coverage unit looks like. So, and look, the Texans, they've not taken advantage when they have played poor defenses. Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago is a great example. Tennessee the week before, like they've not taken advantage, but it's not like it's the, like you said, it's not an island and the rest of those guys aren't the 85 Bears coming to town. Like it's a defense that they may have to scheme their ass off to slow down Nico Collins. And even then you still might be able to have opportunities to hurt them through the air.
No doubt.
And I'm not, and like, I know Bradley Chubb's practicing. First game out of the chute for a pass rusher after a major knee injury. I'm not super scared about that. Okay. I'm not, he rushes off the edge. The edges have been okay on the offensive line. I'm not super scared of Bradley Chubb if he's back in this one. Now, I will say that kid they got out of Penn State, Chop Robinson, he's pretty darn good.
He's good. And a lot of people kind of liked him heading into the draft as well.
Well, and he does something too that sometimes gives Laramie problems, as good as Laramie's been, is those speedy guys that just run past Laramie Tunsil like we saw it when the Rams were in town and Jared Verse did it and he put Tunsil in a blender a couple times in the preseason. Like those speedy guys where it's hard for him to get his, and certainly smaller guys too, where it's hard for him to really get his hands on them. Those guys sometimes can get one or two on Laramie and certainly on Titus as well. And then that may be all you need if you're Miami is, hey, you get a big sack on third down. Like, the Texans haven't really been a team that's consistently scoring a bunch. So you turn a field goal situation into a punt situation. You take 3 points off the board. That could be one of those final margin type things in that game. It might not take a lot from the defense if they get enough big plays because the Texans just haven't been as consistent.
It's also like an interesting observation with Miami where, you head into this season with probably the most among the most respected weapons on offense, I would say. And you bring in Odell Beckham Jr., you've got a Jonnu Smith revival going on. You drafted a running back early on day 3. There's just a lot of there's a lot of desire to like bring in more guys. You drafted Chop Robinson. There's just a lot of desire to add skill position guys. Like look at San Francisco. Like they drafted Ricky Pearsall. The Rams still drafted Jordan Whittington, even though they had Puka and Cooper Kupp. Like all of these teams, the Packers, hell, they offered Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. Like they were trying to keep both guys.
Yep.
They drafted a running back. Like it's like all these Shanahan guys, like they just want to add as much skill position talent as possible. And it was just like, let's run it back with Metch and Hutchinson, and we'll take Cade Stover kid, and we're good at running back. Like the guy wasn't even playable, but we're good at running back. Not that I'm bitter or anything. I'm not bitter or envious, but it's just I'm hoping that this is what we look at next year, and we kind of step away from the defense.
Well, and look, I don't think you can fix everything in one offseason, but they ignored some things. Like there were some things that didn't get addressed. Now they went and got a running back 1, but they don't have a running back 2. So they thought they did, but they misevaluated Dameon Pierce. He's not a running back 2. He's a special teams player now to this team. That's what he is.
Good one. And a good one.
He is a good one. He is a good one. Landry, Thursday Night Football tonight, you mentioned it. It is the trees that you want to be picking off of. And I mean, these two teams make it look easy on offense sometimes. And I'm envious of that. And it doesn't matter who the opponent is. They have long stretches of the game where it just looks easy. And one day we will watch Houston Texans football and it will look easy on offense.
Hopefully. Yeah. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch the pipeline. It's fun to watch what they got. It's also kind of a battle tonight because the Rams can kind of solidify themselves as in the driver's seat of the playoff picture, despite just an array of injuries. And the 49ers, who dead team walking, I mean, don't look now. If they win, they're 500. So I just like kind of seeing where D'Amico came from, where Slowik came from, the connection to McVay and Slowik and all these guys, and just kind of seeing how this plays out. So we always like to localize. I think this is a hell of a way to start. We don't have to reset or rehash all the manners in which to be envious. And in fairness, I mean, these guys are further along in their coaching tenure. So I mean, it's
that, I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that I just consistently found myself coming back to as I talk about this team with people and as I really think about it, is like, and it really stems from our Dan Campbell conversation last week when we were talking about the Lions. Like Dan Campbell's been coaching for however many years. This is year 3 with the exact same team for Ben Johnson coaching in that position. And like certainly the guys tonight, how long they've been coaching, how long they've been in charge of offenses or been around offensive units. And then you just look at even one of the quarterbacks tonight, Stafford. He's played a tremendous amount of football. Like it does take time to get to where these guys are, and you can't fast forward that, and you can't make up for that anywhere else than just having it happen. And it's like that's something that I always keep in the back of my mind. Maybe some would see it as an excuse, maybe some would see it as hope for down the road, is that like time is going to get these guys better than where they are right now. Like CJ Stroud year 5 should look a whole hell of a lot better than year 2. D'Amico Ryan's year 5 as a head coach should look a whole lot better than year 2. Like that's something that always kind of rattles around in the back of my brain, especially when I think about like, man, McVay's actually been there a long time now. And Shanahan, obviously, what he's done in San Fran and how long he's been there, and then their coaches and certain players and quarterbacks. And it does take time for some of these things. It might be an excuse for some people, but that's also like kind of a hope point in the back of my brain too.
No, I mean, it's reality, you know. I mean, there are exceptions, and you see it happen fast. And when you see the Texans do what they did last year, sometimes maybe expectations are just too high. Maybe they're just a little bit too high. Maybe they're not realistic. But yeah, you see it, and you kind of get reminded of it. Uh, early on. I mean, Shanahan started out with a couple rough seasons. It was a bad process, and they didn't take advantage of the draft, I guess, the same way the Texans did last year, getting two kind of cornerstone guys. So yeah, it could be a lot worse. You want to say it could be a lot better. Maybe that's unrealistic, but really, man, it's just cabin fever, bro. Like I just need to see a game. Like it was nice to get the bye. It was nice to get a break from the squad, but at this point, we all know what needs to happen. We all know that it's not as awesome right now as we thought it would be, but it's not as bad. And in this league, a lot of things can happen very, very quickly. And they do have some good pieces to work with. So it's going to be fun. And I'm just glad that this week is so stacked, and it starts with very familiar faces that are easy to connect to the Texans. So I'm really excited about it.
You gotta lean for the game tonight. Rams are 3-point
Niners, man.
dogs on the road in
Niners
San
all day.
Francisco.
I'm going Niners, but don't
Really,
follow me. You going Rams?
really. 3 points is
You going?
nice. I'd probably take the Rams plus the 3.
Well, I just look at this as it always seems like whenever these teams have
It's
like these epic performances and then they go on the road on a short week, there's kind of potential for a letdown. So I just think the performance that the Rams had, while impressive, I think the 49ers are desperate, and a desperate 49er team just kind of scares me. I still have a lot of respect for them.
it 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 I totally agree with that. That you don't typically see giant offensive performances back to back, especially when you got to go on the road against a somewhat tough defense. Um, this is sort of a playoff eliminator, just because
Oh, it
the
is.
the Commanders have had a lot of success and have pushed the level to what you need to get to for that 7th seed a lot higher. I mean the Vikings are the 5 seed with 11 wins. The Packers are the 6th seed with 9 wins. And it's like you got the Rams at 7 and the 49ers at 6. And like you lose here and you're probably out of the running here if you're the
Yeah.
49ers.
Yeah, no result would surprise me. If you asked me to bet, I would take the 49ers just based on the overall desperation. But no result at all would surprise me in this game, and I'm really excited for it. Really excited for it. I'm excited for Sunday. God, I can't wait for Sunday. It's gonna be fun. Can't wait to get out there.
And you got it for the folks tonight at 10:30 on the locker room. Plenty to talk about on there.
Yes, I do. And always remember, whether Slowik keeps his job or whether he doesn't, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks, everybody.